What is making Pocket FM a successful venture and probably India's first B2C entertainment company which is winning the world? That would be the first question, and second would be why audio?
Namaskaram, Calicut, Shukumanu. So let me probably take the first question first. So the second question first, Rahul. Why audio? Um, I think the question is why not? Storytelling in the form of audio predates both text and video. If you look at the history, video has been in existence for the last 100 years alone. And even writing has been in existence, at least the recorded history, for the last maybe 5,000 years. But storytelling has been in existence in the audio format since the being of humans. And even if you look at the cultural aspects, we have been grown up listening to stories in audio format from our, let's say, grandparents and otherwise. And it has always been as part of the culture. So I think the more important question was, how do we get those right content which people will love listening in the audio format? And that is where, let's say 5 years ago, when we were experimenting on what content format would work in audio, we tried our hands on multiple formats. We also tried podcasts, we tried short form series, but eventually what we realized is that the retention of long form series actually stick. Like think of Game of Thrones, but in audio format. Um, Video in the video space, we have a lot of OTT platforms. We have Netflix, we have um, Disney, we have Hotstar, and so many others who are creating these fantastic web series. But there was nothing very similar in the audio content, and that is what Pocket FM cracked. And now that is essentially what Pocket FM is. It's essentially the largest audio series, long form series content platform in the world, where we have more than 75,000 titles on our platform. We have more than 250,000 writers globally creating content on our platform. And that's essentially the power of storytelling, and it's not just limited to India. What we've also realized is that if you have great stories to tell, that sort of transcends boundaries, languages, and also formats. So that is where Pocket FM is one of the also first B2C tech companies which has been able to grow its wings beyond India. We have taken the company, we have taken the writers and the stories along with us from India to all the other parts of the part of the globe, and we have the overall 250 million plus listener community who listen on Pocket FM.
Okay. You said audio series. Now, what is audio series and how is it different from audiobooks or podcast?
Yeah, so audiobooks is, as the name suggests, it's book for people who don't like maybe reading and prefer listening. They can tune in and start listening the same audiobook. But that book could be in any genre. It could be, let's say it could be as good as, let's say, Gita, or it could be as and can encompass different form of writing. Could be biography, could be anything else. Podcast is more like conversation, something that what we are doing right now. It's just a conversation which people can tune in, and it's usually for a period of around, let's say, 30 minutes to maybe 3 hours, and is this jointed from, let's say, one episode to another episode and so on and so forth. So that's podcast for you. And if you look at the entire content library that we have, both podcasts and audiobooks are heavy on, let's say, knowledge, learning, and so on. And that is where one category which no one essentially was focusing and doubling down on was entertainment. And that primarily is what audio series is. It's essentially long form fictional entertainment that can be binged, listened to by any user, and it's very episodic in nature. So you tune in to the audio series and you can just keep on listening one episode after the other.
So you said episodes. So about 10, 15 episodes.
It's most of our good and blockbusters have more than 800 to 1000 episodes. So think about the scale, 800 to 1000 episodes, and each episode would be about for like 10 to 15 minutes. And that clubbed with 75,000 titles on the platform. So we're talking about 100-hour plus, 150-hour plus, 200-hour plus series in genres like fantasy, drama, romance, sci-fi, and the likes of it. And we've just started. And each genre has its own TAM that we can capture.
Okay, so that's a new category then. Uh, so I'm sure that there are people in the audience who may not be aware of Pocket FM. So on behalf of them, my question would be, how do you create content for Pocket FM? So long, like 75,000 series, uh, 800 to 1,000 episodes on average. So how do you create such a long tail of content?
Right. There's no easy answer to that, but there's a lot of math plus creativity that goes behind cracking the entire blockbuster. And by now we have sort of cracked the code to create a blockbuster which sticks, which has a very humongous appeal among the audience. And even if, let's say, any user who come and start listening to that series, retain on the particular platform. And I think all the kudos go to the writers that we have on our platform. They are the one who are the heroes on the platform. They are the one who create these content. We are sort of an empowering tool, if I may have to say so, who empower them in a way or provide them with tools and platform where they can distribute their content. And, and it's a very democratized manner. Anyone and everyone can come on the platform, can start logging, can sign up on the platform and can start writing. And we give them an initial boost on the platform so that they get their initial set of audience. And on top of that, they can also get their own set of people onto the platform who could start listening to these series. And if their series is doing good, the platform automatically starts propagating, start distributing it to more and more audience. And let's say once we realize that a particular series is doing great in, let's say, one geography, one language, for instance, let's say Malayalam in India, that's not the end. As I mentioned earlier, that if there's a great story, what we have realized is it could have an appeal beyond the same language, beyond one language and one geography. So our internal team, and we have an engine for that as well, where we adapt the same, let's say, Malayali series into an English series, or let's say into a Spanish series, and then propagate it in countries such as Latin America, US, and the likes of it.
So the writers from India has the potential to reach the global audience?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I mentioned, that Pocket FM is a company which has gone beyond India to outside of India, and we have sort of taken the writers along with us. By now we have, I'll give you a few stats as well in terms of the reach of audience that these series could have. We have almost about 7 series which have crossed 100 crore in revenue, almost, and that is just
So you are saying cumulatively or each one of them?
each one of them.
Wow.
Each one of them 100 CR plus. Just imagine even like great movies in the entire industry. There are very few who actually cross that mark. And all of this is very unprecedented, unheard of, and could seem unimaginable. And we also have over 30 series which have crossed 10 CR globally. So that's the scale at which we are operating with 250 million plus listeners around the globe, and anyone who has great story to tell and has the potential to actually reach to all of these listeners across the globe.
That's amazing. Uh, so again, on behalf of the audience, what I would like to ask is, can anyone from the audience become a writer for Pocket FM?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, if you look at many of our writers who have recently cracked blockbusters, they were actually not professional writers. We actually thought, and this goes again against the normal intuition. We thought that, hey, you know what? We are asking writers to write long form series, 100-hour plus, 150-hour plus series. Would it be possible even for people like you and I? For instance, I'm not a writer myself. I could probably barely write that way. But anyone who has an interest in long form series, what we have realized is people on the platform have listened to the series for, let's say, 6 months, 9 months, probably a year, and they have automatically realized what does it take to narrate a good story. They themselves understand now that what makes a good story different from a, let's say, not so good story. And so hence anyone and everyone can start writing. Definitely it has a learning curve. It could take some time for someone to sort of hone their craft, but eventually if someone is working on it, they can clearly do it.
So how they should start?
It's as good as downloading the application, Pocket FM or Pocket Novel. There is a write button at the bottom. They can click on it, they can sign up, and they can start writing. What I would definitely recommend is for them to at least also consume these series, because that is where they would realize what does it take to create audio series, which could be little different from other form of writings.
You said pocket novel. Now what is that?
So, as I mentioned, that if you have a great story, it need not be bound to, let's say, one particular content format. What we realized is that we started with audio series. We had to start somewhere, but now the way we think Pocket FM is not as an audio company alone. It's an entertainment umbrella under which there are different content formats that we can distribute the content to the audience. For instance, there are a lot of us within this particular room who would probably enjoy listening. There are probably certain other set of folks who would probably enjoy reading more. And that should not be a constraint for them to consume the content. So that's Pocket Novel. This is a platform for reading where people can read the same set of stories instead of listening.
So are there different treatment for pocket novel and pocket FM in terms of storytelling?
So I think the base concept of storytelling sort of remains the same, that it has to be sticky, it has to be appealing, it has to be imaginative, it has to be creative. But there are definitely few nuances which are different between the two platforms. For instance, I'll probably call out few of the different nuances that are there in case of, let's say, audio writing. In case of audio, it needs to be, the narration needs to be clear, because people cannot reread or rewind easily, and hence the entire narration needs to be seamless. The transition between the different arcs need to be seamless. The second thing is that as part of the language, it needs to incorporate those sensory language, so that within the words itself, people can visualize what is the emotion, what is the environment around which the entire story is being narrated. The third thing is also that, and which I believe is common for both novel and audio writing, the story has to have a very good power start. It needs to be, it needs to stick with the audience within the first 5 minutes itself. by maybe starting with, let's say, an open-ended question which will make the user excited about understanding or exploring that question further. And along with the power start, you also need to have um, cliffhangers around your entire story so that it makes the user excited and keep on binge listening one episode after the other. So you have a power start, you have the entire rhythm of the story. These are few things which makes, let's say, a good story a great story.
You mentioned binge listening. Like we have heard about binge watching with Netflix and all, but what is binge listening and how do you see that binge listening is happening on Pocket?
Yeah, uh, it's basically binge watching, but in audio format. So you're basically listening the entire audio series, hour after hour, and as I mentioned, we have more than 100-hour plus content on the platform. So
100
what
hours or 100,000?
for each series, it could be 100-hour plus, 150-hour plus, and then obviously if you combine everything, it becomes much more. And what we have also realized on the platform is that because it's an entertainment content, it's easier to consume. You can consume when, let's say, you're commuting, or when you're cooking, or if, let's say, if you're walking, or doing anything which may not require your active presence, and that makes the entire audio series binge worthy. And what we have also realized is that on an average on our platform, the listeners could binge listen almost more than 1.5 hours on a daily basis. And that's a lot.
You mentioned about Pocket Novel as well as Pocket FM. Can a novel be an audio series as well?
Absolutely. If for any writer, they need to start somewhere, and eventually, a writer basically writes in text format itself, and we, from the platform perspective, just change the novel from text format to audio format. The writers don't need to worry about it. It's completely AI generated for now. So thanks to the entire advent of AI, it has become much easier to convert a text format into different languages. And that is what we use, at least in the beginning, to propagate the stories onto the platform.
Now, the most important question. Uh, what is the biggest reward for writers to be a part of Pocket family?
I think so. Every platform has some value proposition to offer. Um, you look at any platform, whether it's an e-commerce or any other utility platform, even on your phone, it has some value proposition to offer. What I believe is that for writers, Pocket FM has all the three value proposition which are very core to human nature, which being financial motivation, recognition, and utility. Now I'll sort of break it down and sort of elaborate each one of them. As I mentioned, any writer can come on the platform and you have an opportunity to reach to 250 million plus listeners across the globe. So it's a tremendous opportunity for someone to get recognized for their writing, for their craft. Second, if the story is doing good, we have financial incentives, we have revenue share for lifetime that gets offered to these writers. So the writers can earn good amount of money from the platform. And they have, there are a lot of writers on an average who earn more than 1 lakh per month just by writing on the platform just through one series. And that's a lot. And
These are not professional writers.
and many of them are not professional writers. Many of them are writing for the very first time professionally for any platform. And after certain initial start, they are now making above of 1 lakh per month. And again, if just, and this keeps on compounding because if you've written a story, let's say 5 years ago, that story will need not have a shelf life. That story could probably be heard and listened by people maybe even a decade later. So that's the scale that I'm talking, and we have had many great writers who have come out of it as well. So that's the second piece, financial motivation. The third lever or the third motivation for any writer to join the platform is utility. Um, we have trainings, tutorials, we have a platform where people can start writing and start crafting their stories. So even if they feel that, hey, they don't want to distribute their content, their stories on our platform, they can still use the platform, at least in the beginning, to craft their stories. And then, of course, once they've seen the utility coming out of it, they can also further choose to distribute it on the same platform.
So, you spoke about writers having that reach, right? That 250 million listeners community all across the globe. I'm sure that the writers are not getting access to that 250 million right at the first go. But how Pocket FM is actually helping this writer to expand their reach, to expand their horizons and reaching out to a bigger community? That's one. Second, you mentioned about revenue sharing. Now, how do you evaluate how much money each and every series is making?
Let me take a step back to answer that question in terms of how we are doing things different with the writers. If you look at the current landscape of the entire publishing industry, um, let's say if you take any of these big publishers, for instance, Penguin or the likes of it, they have a limited number of books that they can publish every year. Because at the end, if you go to an airport, if you go to a bookstore, there are limited, finite number of shelves on which you can store the books. So it becomes very difficult for, let's say, a new writer to actually even get their books published in the first place. And and it's very unfortunate that less than, let's say, 1% of these writers eventually end up publishing their book, which could then be distributed, let's say, even at least in the same country. And it's not just in India, even globally, the number is very low. And that's essentially what we are trying to also democratize by using technology, because now we don't need, let's say, one editor who would be a gatekeeper in publishing the content onto the platform till the time the content is meeting the content guidelines, it's not plagiarized, it's not profane, um, it is fictional long form series. We publish the content on the platform, and then we let the users, the readers and listeners decide whether they're liking the story or not.
By writers, we always look up to films, as you mentioned, books. On top of that, probably films and OTTs, the web series, the OTT series that are happening, which you said probably counting to about 1%. But there is a reason the writers are approaching that category. Maybe they are a glamour. Maybe there is a lot of recognition. Maybe there is also some celebrity status. So are Pocket FM writers also enjoying a similar kind of status quo?
Oh, absolutely. We have great writers now who have almost reached the celebrity kind of a status. Writers such as Moni Singh and many others have been recognized in the entire industry, and many of the media outlets, recognized media outlets, have also reached out to them to learn more about it. So it's not really limited. It's not that audio is not glamorous anymore. I'm not suggesting that should be a reason for anyone to join in, but I do understand that for any artist, recognition becomes the most important thing. And along with getting recognized, around their audience and with the audience, there's definitely beyond the entire platform on which they do get recognized.
Uh, you stressed about AI quite a bit. Now, as far my information goes, the entire creator community are pretty much worried about the intervention of AI and probably the risk it is posing on their creativity. How Pocket FM is working on that?
Yeah, good question, Rahul. I think first and foremost, wanted to make it right clear um, that creativity is nowhere to be gone, and the entire um, creative folks, the writers, should not be considering AI as a threat, but they should start thinking AI as a great opportunity for them to augment their writing and to hone their craft. Like, think about what AI is doing. Think about what the camera phones that came in, what they did. Once the entire camera phones came in, every one of us became photographers and videographers, right? We don't need, let's say, um, huge DSLR cameras, etc., to become a photographer. And not just photography. Beyond that, people have now become YouTubers because of access to better technology in terms of um, videography and so on. So very similarly, think about AI. That is what I feel AI will do in the entire content writing. That now all that you need to have is a vision, creativity, and a knack of understanding the users for you to connect with the users. And then you have AI to help you craft your story, help fill in the cliffhangers at the right places, help you with better grammar, better language, and so on. So think of AI as a personal coach for the writers. Um, if you need athletes to get Olympic medals, um, it's very difficult for them to do it alone. As you can imagine, every single athlete, super athletes in the world, all have coaches who work along with them to then improve their craft. So I think we should start thinking about AI as a personal coach for all these writers to improve their craft and make their stories more appealing. And the creativity angle will still resides with them.
Great. Okay, so Pocket FM is also a tech company, and that means you are also working with a lot of data. Now, does that help in terms of building a more engaging storytelling for the audience?
Definitely. So we look at data in every juncture um, to basically get the blockbuster out of all the content library that we have. Like, I keep on saying this, that content is stick in a hay problem. That there are thousands of content, thousands of stories, but which one will become that blockbuster? It's very difficult even for a subjective editorial person to identify with certainty. And we have seen that so many times. There are so many great movies which we feel that it would work well because of the cast, because of the storyline, etc. But eventually it doesn't really work that well. And same goes for storytelling in the form of audio or in the text format as well. So that is where we leave it to the audience directly and let them decide whether they are liking the story, and we quantify that using data. So we look at, let's say, out of 100 users who started listening to a particular series, how many of them continue to listen the same series beyond, let's say, 1 hour, 5 hour, 10 hours, and so on, and keep on providing that feedback to the writers themselves, so that not just they understand what is working, but they also understand where things are not working. So for them, they would be able to realize that, okay, this is the story that I was writing. Um, there is a drop in retention of listeners around 5 to 6 hours. Maybe that is where something I need to change. Like, imagine this as a utility for the writers, that if you're writing a series, if you're writing a story, if you're writing um, something, you are getting real-time feedback by your listeners and readers, and something which you can then incorporate in your writing to make it even better. So that is where we use data, and then basis that we also have our own internal recommendation engine. So when we see that some of the stories are working better, we propagate that stories even more. And not just that, we also look at, let's say, okay, there is, let's say, male drama. There are certain stories which have more affinity towards male. There are certain stories which have more affinity towards, let's say, female, different demography, and so on. So we look at those aspects as well, and then accordingly recommend those stories to different cohorts of users to, to make it, to make the platform work for both the writers as well as the listeners and the readers.
You spoke about incentivizing the writers. You spoke about blockbusters making 100 crores. But how Pocket FM is making money?
I mean, if writers are making money, the business will automatically grow. Um, we have a monetization model with our users where, and it's a microtransaction model. In simple words, if anyone is listening to a particular series, um, we offer them free episodes in the beginning, and then for them to understand whether they want to continue listening to the series, if they're liking the series, and then beyond a point, they also get free episodes every single day. And beyond that, if they want to listen more, if they want to binge listen, they can pay a certain, they can sort of unlock those episodes using coins. And coins is something that they can purchase from the platform itself. So that's roughly our monetization model, among others. That is how we earn money, and that is, and a portion of that money also go to the writers who are writing these stories in the form of revenue share. So that's how Pocket FM makes money. That's how the writers who are writing these series make money.
So that's becomes easier for Pocket FM to understand which audio series is making how much money.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Uh, there are a lot of writers I have interacted in this event who are talking about a lot of challenges in terms of when they are reaching to the publishers, they are facing a lot of roadblocks, lot of resistance. So, uh, like, what do you suggest this writer should do to overcome these challenges? Straight away come to Pocket FM and start writing, whether there will be any roadblocks or any kind of intervention to resist their storytelling on the platform?
Usually, I think if you ask a writer, if someone says that, hey, I'm a writer, the usual follow-up question comes in, okay, you write, but what do you do for a living? Um, it becomes difficult, definitely, for writers to sort of make a living out of their passion, and I think that's essentially what this talk is all about. But what I feel is that there has never been a better time for writers um, to convert their passion of writing into profession. Um, think about Pocket FM. It's, as I mentioned, it's democratizing the way story gets originated, because I fundamentally believe that talent is distributed mostly homogeneously across the world. It's the right access and opportunity that is limited to certain people, certain areas, and certain geographies. But with internet being present everywhere, with platforms like Pocket FM being present for at anyone's disposal, anyone and everyone can start writing. All that they need to do is come on the platform, sign up, consume content to understand what people like, what people don't like, and then start writing. And then automatically the system will start understanding which series is doing great, and that series will automatically become a blockbuster. There is no need of having a gatekeeper. The end listeners and users are telling you what what story they are liking and which stories they are not liking.
Okay. This brings me to the next question. How do you see the future of storytelling evolving? Mostly for the writers who are probably getting into this art of creativity.
Yeah. I think there are different forms in which storytelling is evolving. With the entire OTT platform, there was a new web series that got unlocked for every one of us, for writers um, to write web series. There is a new phenomenon happening in the world, which is storytelling in the form of long fictional series, which can be then used to be propagated on audio format. Globally, audio as a content format is growing 10 to 15% year on year. And if you look at, let's say, audio series as a content format within audio, that is compounding 25% to 30% and will continue to do so until 2030. This is a great opportunity, and especially that clubbed with how content creation, even in the form of writing, will become easier with artificial intelligence, Gen AI, and the likes of it, along with having the opportunity and easy access to distribution platforms such as Pocket FM. It's a tremendous opportunity for writers to grab, and that is what we are also seeing. We are not just seeing how um, the the opportunity and the access are being democratized, but we are also seeing an interest among users globally to consume such content. All that they want is good content, and they're ready to listen, they're ready to binge listen, and they're ready to pay for it.
So you mentioned about novel becoming audio series. You mentioned about a series which was created in one language, maybe Malayalam, and getting adapted into Spanish or English for the US market. So the writers are going to get rewarded for each one of this, or is it going to be for the original creation that the writer has done?
See, at the end, the stories are theirs, um, and hence, even when the platform adapt the content in any other language or distribute it in any other region, they also get, the writers also get a share of every single penny that the company makes.
So it becomes a kind of exponential earning potential for them. This is just not limited to 1 lakh rupees a month, but probably the writers has the potential to start earning in dollars as well, right?
Absolutely. And and what we have also started seeing is that a lot of um, writers on our platform had another day job. As I mentioned, it was very difficult to have writing as a standalone profession for many of us. And with now that they have started seeing a consistent earning, many of them have actually switched from being, let's say, a school teacher or a professor, or working in banks or somewhere else, into writing full time, because they see the potential. They see that, hey, it's not something that they have just earned for a brief period, and they see that if they write more, they write more frequently, they write better, they can earn much more, and the earnings, as you mentioned, just keeps on increasing exponentially, one series after the other.
So do you have any advice for the writers who are probably thinking about or like just scratching the surface in terms of writing something. Now, they may not be professional writers. They can be students. They can be homemakers. Even they can be professional as well. So, any piece of advice who are thinking to explore this more of a hobby and passion rather than just a pure play earning profession?
So I'll give you a very interesting anecdote, Rahul. We basically surveyed all our writers on our platform, asking them that, hey, what is their core profession? And what we realized is that the first profession that came out to be was housewives. The second profession was student, right? So they don't really need to be professional writers to start writing. But yes, it is definitely important for them to understand on what listeners want to listen, what users want to listen and read. And that probably will come by um, consuming a lot of content by yourselves, so that then you realize, okay, this is something that I like. I have another story to tell with little bit of different arc, little bit of different creativity. Um, and I know that this is, and then you start writing on the platform. If you need to, again, being very cliche over here, but if you need to climb a mountain, you need to start somewhere. You need to start from base camp 1. Um, what I would suggest the writers here and across is that if you're really interested in writing, just come on the platform, start writing small, see what is sticking, and you have the platform to who give you consistent feedback. You have the editorial support to give you feedback on how you can improve your story even further. And then eventually, I'm sure if you're consistent at it, you will be able to generate blockbuster eventually. In fact, I mean, as a matter of fact, few of our blockbusters were written by first-time writers, and within the first attempt itself, they were able to create a blockbuster. Something that we thought was not really possible. Usually it would take maybe few attempts for someone to sort of get into the habit of writing and start writing. But because they had consumed content themselves, they now understand what, let's say, people like them would like to hear and read, and they had a story to narrate. They started writing, and then that became a blockbuster.
Can you share some data, like the maximum earning a writer may have earned from Pocket FM in a year? Is that possible?
Um, I'll give you um, some numbers to get an understanding of it. Um, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have 7 plus series, which have earned 100 CR plus, and we have 30 series which have earned 10 crore plus in revenue, and a substantial revenue percentage actually go to the writers. And on an average, if you look at the 10 percentile, top 10 percentile of the cohort, they can easily earn 1 lakh rupees plus. And that is just the beginning. We have not really scaled the entire writers platform. We have not started adapting their series in other languages and other formats. And once that starts happening at scale, the writers' earnings can be much, much more than this as well. We have, for instance, writers who have written for the US for in English language, who is earning, who has already earned about $50,000, $100,000. So that's the rough scale that we are talking
So
about.
that's almost once a year.
Yes, and that's just in the last 6 months.
Wow. I don't think writers get to earn that much while writing for any films or OTT series.
I guess not.
Wow. Okay. Any final piece of advice for the writers who want to be a part of Pocket Family, who want to start probably just now after hearing this encouraging story from you?
I think what I would want to say here is that there has never been a better time for writers to convert their writing passion into profession. All the blockers that they had earlier in terms of opportunity to write, access to the right audience, distribution opportunities have been cracked by platforms like Pocket FM, like ourselves. What I would recommend everyone is whoever wants to start writing, and even if they don't know how to write, they can start, they can download the application, start consuming the content, start listening, and there are so many inspirational stories on the platform, and just inspirationals and entertainment. So you can start consuming and you would realize that, hey, this is something that I am enjoying. And if you have a story to narrate, there are millions of users who would also enjoy your story. Um, so all that they need to do is start small, come on the platform, sign up as a writer, start writing. We also have our editorial support team, who keep on suggesting what to edit, how to craft their stories better. We have in-app support as well in terms of trainings and tutorials, which can really help these writers become a better version of themselves.
And if anyone from the audience, they need to have more clarity, more information about the process, how to go about it.
Yes, so I'll also be there in the booth in the
The exhibition center.
exhibition center. So I'll be there as well for another couple of hours. So feel free to reach out. Happy to chat more about how to start your writing journey with Pocket FM, and would love to have you at the booth and as well as a writer on the platform.
Thank you, Mayank.
Thanks, Rahul.
Audience, any question? Mayank could be happy to take it.
You just mentioned that AI could be a writer coach. My question is whether AI can be a writer coach, because there are a lot of semantic issues. This only chat GPT is only semantics only, syntax only. It is not at all semantics. Means the meaning relations it didn't got so far. My second part is regarding, I would like to make a pocket sci-fi, science fiction. Could you please advise me?
So can I request you to bring the mic closer? I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm not able to hear. And if you could repeat the question as well.
Well, I would like to write a sci-fi, pocket sci-fi. How can it be made a cliffhanger? What are the tips for that?
So what he is asking is, sir, correct me if I'm getting your question wrong. What he is asking is how a platform like ChatGPT is going to help. And second is he has a ready story on sci-fi, how to expand that into a long-form content. Right, sir?
Yes, yes. A cliffhanger.
With cliffhangers, yeah. Thanks, sir, for the question. Let me answer the first question first, that how can ChatGPT or any LLM model, if I have to just use a basic term, or AI in general, can help suggest and become a personal coach for a writer. So if you look at the usual LLM models such as ChatGPT, they are fed with the content from the internet. What we have also done on top of it is we have also fed a lot of fictional series that we have with ourselves in our content library. And now the model understands at least what doesn't work. For instance, the model is now able to understand, just imagine, like, for instance, you have added the first 1 hour of your content. The co-pilot, the model can suggest that, hey, you know what? You don't really have a good power start. you don't have enough cliffhangers in the entire first 1 hour of content. Even if you have cliffhangers, your cliffhangers are not powerful enough. AI models can also suggest whether your plots um, are, are sort of increasing gradually in a manner which will be appealing to the user. So based on that, a lot of suggestions can be then used as feedback by the writers to then improve on their story. To answer your second question in terms of how do you put cliffhanger in your sci-fi series, right? I think I would say as a writer you would know better in terms of what cliffhanger to put in. I can still suggest how to think about putting the right cliffhangers at the right places. So what we have observed that, let's say if you're writing a particular series, um, one episode after the other, generally at the end of the episode, or if not within every episode, even if you have, let's say, cliffhanger after every 3 episodes, definitely helps. Now, I think sci-fi probably, or fantasy in general, is the easiest to have a cliffhanger. What you can start doing is you can move from one arc to another, and whenever you do so, you can put a cliffhanger to suggest what could happen, to create a sense of mysticism which could which could erupt questions among the listeners, so that they will then binge listen to answer those questions in the further episodes. So this is how you can think about adding cliffhangers in your sci-fi story or any other story for that matter.
So, whenever somebody applies for a role of a content writer, companies generally look for a portfolio of previously published works. Since Pocket FM is an audio platform, do you give credit for the writers? What I mean is, can I show my work or do you publish my name? To be simple.
So what he's asking is, will he get, so if he is writing any story for Pocket FM, will he get the credit?
Absolutely. Even if you open Pocket FM, so there are two versions of it. There are few originals that we write within the company itself, and then there are independent writers who can come on the platform and start writing. But either way, as I mentioned earlier, for us writers, creative folks, even the people who are narrating the stories, we give the credit where it's due. That's not ours to take. So even if someone who's working with Pocket FM, we also showcase their names against the series on the application on the platform. And for both, for even if someone is writing independently or if they're writing as part of the team.